Hey there! Imagine the hush before a story begins, the kind that settles over a room when the fire dims and every shadow seems to lean in to listen. Tonight, you step into the damp chill of Kensington Palace, where a child's world is so small, even the echo of your own footsteps feels like a secret. But before the palace doors close behind you, know this. The loneliest girl in England will soon hold the fate of millions in her gloved hands, and the way she gets there will surprise you. If you enjoy slipping into forgotten worlds and unraveling the twists that changed history, only stick around if it genuinely brings you comfort. And since we're all winding down together, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. This is truly a bedtime gathering across the globe. Dim your lights, pull the covers up, and let's drift back in time where the only thing warmer than your blanket is the story itself. Kensington Palace, early 1830s. You, a small child, are curled in a narrow bed pressed against the wall, corners of the wallpaper peeling back like old scabs. Cold air leaks in, so sharp you can see your breath fogging the morning gloom. The mattress sags in the middle, and if you hold very still, you can almost imagine the world outside is silent. But it never is. The footsteps begin before you open your eyes, heavy, deliberate, and never only yours. Someone is always near. A nursemaid at the door, a governess in the corridor, your mother's presence hovering in the next room. Even in sleep, you are watched. This is not the childhood of storybooks. You are Victoria, but no one calls you queen, not yet. The Duchess, your mother, keeps you sealed tight behind the palace walls, a living ornament to be polished and presented, never played with. The rules are everywhere, pressing in as close as the high collar of your nightgown. You must not run in the halls. You must not speak to strangers. You must not write letters without permission. Every day is a list of must, nots, a code etched into your bones. The only warmth comes from a single, flickering fire in the far corner, never enough to chase away the damp. Your world is a cage of etiquette and expectation, and you feel both too large and too small for it. The city of London sprawls just beyond the palace gates, alive with laughter, clattering carts, and the glow of gas lamps on wet cobblestones. But you are kept far from it, as if happiness is something you might catch if you get too close. The Duchess claims it is for your own good, but you suspect otherwise. You ache for a friend, or even a warm fire, or just the chance to decide, for once, what you want to do when you wake. Loneliness is the first taste in your mouth every morning, as familiar as the cold tea and bread that often greet you at breakfast. The breakfast itself is a ritual of control. A servant often brings a tray, porridge, sometimes lumpy, bread with a scraping of butter, and a cup of tea so weak it looks more like cloudy water than anything fit for royalty. The tea is usually drowned in milk, as if someone worries the strength might be too much for you. Your mother sits across the table, pale and watchful, while John Conroy, her ever-present adviser, hovers at her side. You eat in silence, with each bite feeling like a test. The clink of your spoon against the bowl is the loudest sound aloud. Conversation is rationed as carefully as sugar. You know better than to ask for jam. It is never offered. After breakfast, lessons begin. The governess paces the room, reciting French verbs while you stare out the tall, rain-streaked windows. It is always grey. You trace the condensation with your finger, drawing shapes you hope no one will notice. Outside, the city pulses with life, but inside, the palace is muffled, each sound swallowed by thick carpets and heavy drapes. The air smells of coal and old fabric, the kind of scent that clings to your skin long after you have left a room. Every so often, a carriage rattles past, just close enough for you to hear the iron wheels grinding against the cobblestones. You wonder where it is going, and if anyone inside feels as trapped as you do. You try to imagine what the world looks like beyond the palace, what the shops on the high street smell like, or if the children in the park ever feel the cold. But you are not allowed out alone, not even for a moment. Your mother insists it is for your own safety, but you know she is afraid, not of the city, but of losing control. She keeps you close like a rare coin, never to be spent. Sometimes, in the quiet between lessons, John Conroy appears. He is always in the background, a shadow in the corner. But when he speaks, his words fill the room. Conroy is the architect of your captivity, the one who designed the system of rules and restrictions that shape your life. He speaks to you as if you are a chess piece, not a child. You learn to listen without answering, to nod when expected, to keep your real thoughts tucked away. When he tries to press you, insisting you sign papers or pledge obedience, you push back, quietly but firmly. The confrontations are never loud, but they simmer just below the surface. Each time you refuse, the tension in the room sharpens, like the snap of a winter branch. The days blend together, a parade of grey mornings and restless afternoons. You wait for something, anything, to break the monotony. Sometimes the only escape is in your imagination. You picture yourself running down the palace corridors, hair flying loose, laughter echoing off the stone walls. Or you imagine slipping out the gate, blending into the city crowd, free for a single afternoon. But the truth is, you are always watched. Even when you are alone, you feel the eyes of the palace on you, pressing down, shaping you into the queen you are meant to become. One morning you wait to find the wallpaper peeling further, the damp spreading like a stain. The air feels heavier, as if the palace itself is holding its breath. You sense that change is coming, though you do not know what form it will take. For now, you wait. The loneliness is deeper than ever, but so is your resolve. You will not be bent to someone else's will, not forever. And outside, beyond the palace gates, the world shifts. The city grows louder, the streets more crowded. You sense, even from your cage, that something is building, a pressure in the air, a promise of transformation. You are still a child, but already history is beginning to gather around you, drawing you toward a future no one can predict. For now, you remain in Kensington, in your narrow bed, listening to the muffled sounds of servants and the distant rumble of the city. The cold is familiar, the loneliness expected. But beneath it all, there is a spark, something restless and bright, waiting for its moment. The palace is a cage, yes, but even cages can open. The air is thick with secrets and expectation, and as you close your eyes, you wonder what tomorrow will bring, and whether you'll finally feel the warmth you crave. You have changed, in small ways, even if the world has not noticed yet. The boundaries feel tighter, but so does your determination. Morning at Kensington means breakfast under the watchful eyes of servants and your mother. But soon, everything will begin to shift. Kensington Palace, 1833. You and your mother seated at the breakfast table, a pair of silent servants in the periphery. The morning air hangs damp and uninviting, wrapping itself around your shoulders like an old woolen shawl. You sit at a table set with military precision, every plate and cup aligned as if your mother expects an inspection rather than a meal. The only warmth comes from the faint steam rising off your bowl of porridge, which, if you are honest, tastes like regret and obligation. The bread is dense and pale, the butter thinly scraped. The tea is so weak it might as well be hot water with a ghost of leaves. Nothing at all like the strong brews you see. People clutching today, desperate for caffeine and comfort. You take a sip, expecting a jolt, but only get disappointment. If you could, you would trade it all for a toasted bagel or a rainbow, bright bowl of cereal, anything with color and joy. Your mother watches you with an unwavering gaze, every movement measured. The rules are unspoken but ironclad. Do not speak unless spoken to, sit straight, keep your eyes down. The servants move around you, their footsteps muffled by thick carpets. Yet you feel their eyes on your back, silently judging your every bite. The only sound is the clink of spoons against porcelain, echoing off the high ceilings and cold stone walls. You shiver, not just from the chill, but from the weight of expectation pressing in from all sides. This is breakfast, not as a pleasure, but as ceremony. The ritual is usually the same. Porridge, bread with a smear of butter, and that pale, uninspired tea with a splash of milk. It is the official start to another, tightly controlled day in Victorian England. And you are at the center, but never in control. You might imagine that being a royal child comes with luxury, but luxury here is an illusion. The palace is draughty, the corridors echo with cold, and the rooms smell faintly of damp fabric and the lingering traces of last night's coal fire. Even the silverware feels heavy in your hand, as if reminding you of the responsibility stitched into your every action. You tuck your feet up under your chair, trying to keep warm, but the cold seeps in anyway. Your mother, the Duchess, sits at the head of the table, her posture flawless, her expression unreadable. She speaks rarely, and when she does, it is to correct, not to comfort. You long for the easy laughter you see in storybooks, but here, affection is rationed more strictly than the butter. The servants keep their faces blank, but you catch their eyes sometimes, full of pity or perhaps curiosity. They know you only as Miss, never by the pet names a child might crave. The palace is a world within a world. Outside, London is waking up. Street vendors shouting, horses clattering over cobblestones, the air thick with the aroma of coal smoke and wet earth. Inside, you are insulated from all of it, not by choice, but by design. Your mother has built a wall around you, high and impenetrable, determined to keep you away from the intrigues of the court and the family of your late father. Friends are forbidden. Letters are censored. The only voices you hear belong to adults who serve your mother's interests, not your own. Sometimes, As you chew a bite of bread, you let your mind drift to the city beyond the palace gates. What would it be like to walk those streets, to smell the hot chestnuts sold on corners, to lose yourself in the crowd? Here, you are always watched, always measured. Even your lessons, French, history, the endless recitation of kings and queens, are taught with the same cold precision as breakfast. There is no room for error, and even less for independence. Your mother's closest advisor, John Conroy, is never far away. You hear his footsteps in the corridors before you see him, his presence announced by the faint scent of pomade and impatience. He hovers, always ready to remind you of your duty, always eager to reinforce your mother's authority. The tension between you and Conroy is a constant undercurrent, flaring into open conflict more and more as you approach adulthood. He wants control. You want freedom. The air in the palace seems to crackle with your silent battles. One morning, as you sit at the table, Conroy enters with a stack of papers. He addresses your mother, but his eyes flick to you, sharp and appraising. He suggests, in his smooth, insistent way, that you should focus more on your studies, particularly constitutional law. You know what this means. He wants you to be prepared, but only on his terms. The idea is to shape you into a queen who will do as she is told, not one who will think for herself. But you are not so easily molded. With each lesson you learn not just the letter of the law, but the power of questioning it. The more you study, the more you see the gaps in Conroy's arguments, the cracks in the walls your mother has built. You finish your breakfast, folding your napkin as you have been taught. The meal is over, but the ceremony continues. You rise, your chair scraping against the floor, and follow your mother into the next room, your shadow stretching along behind you in the pale morning light. The palace feels both enormous and suffocating, every corridor a reminder of your isolation. Yet something is shifting. You can sense it in the way Conroy's demands have become sharper, in the way your mother clings tighter to her routines. The closer you get to adulthood, the more they try to keep you contained. But you are beginning to push back. The confrontations with Conroy are no longer whispered arguments. They are open, heated, impossible to ignore. Each clash leaves the air charged and brittle. You retreat to your bedroom afterward, heart pounding, aware that you are no longer the compliant child they want you to be. This morning ritual, repeated day after day, is more than just a meal. It is a training ground, a test of endurance, a slow forging of your will. The cold, the silence, the endless rules, they are meant to shape you. But they are also making you stronger, teaching you to read between the lines, to find small pockets of resistance, even in the most rigid routine. Sometimes, as you stare into your milky tea, you wonder how much longer you can endure this life of ceremony and control. Yet beneath the discomfort, something else is growing. A sense of self, a quiet defiance. The palace may be cold and unyielding, but you are learning to find warmth in your own resolve. The consequence is simple. Every silent breakfast, every measured word, is sharpening your sense of what you do and do not want. You are being prepared for something bigger, even if no one in this palace will admit it. Soon, the world outside these walls will come crashing in. The city you have only glimpsed from frosty windows will become your stage. The rules that bind you now will be the very ones you test, stretch, and eventually break. And when that moment comes, you will remember these mornings, the chill, the silence, the taste of weak tea, as the beginning of your journey from isolation to influence. For now, you step into the corridor, your breath visible in the cold air, and brace yourself for another day under watchful eyes. You are never alone. Kensington Palace, 1835. It is early morning. You are here with your mother, the Duchess, and the ever-watchful Sir John Conroy. The bedroom air is thick with cold, heavy enough to taste on your tongue. Dampness clings to the drapes, and there is a persistent smell of coal mingled with lavender water. Your slippers muffle your steps as you cross the faded rug, but you are not alone. You are never alone. The Kensington system, your mother's not-so-secret weapon, means your day is mapped out before you even open your eyes. You want to escape, just for a moment, to see the city you have only glimpsed through rain-streaked windows. Instead, your world is this, a series of dim, drafty corridors lined with portraits of ancestors who never smile. You study their faces, searching for a hint of rebellion, but find only resignation. Conroy, your mother's shadow, orchestrates every moment. Breakfast is a parade of monitored glances and measured conversation. Your mother's voice is gentle, but her eyes are sharp, always scanning for signs of disobedience. The city outside is a distant rumor, muffled by stone walls and thick curtains. Sometimes, as you sit at your writing desk, you can catch the faint scent of smoke wafting in from beyond the palace gates. It smells like adventure, or at least freedom. But here, freedom is a word you have learned not to say aloud. Every letter you write is read. Every book you choose is approved. The rules are as rigid as the corset you are expected to wear, even though you are still a child. When you ask about your father's family, your mother's lips press into a thin line. The answer is always the same. Not now, not ever. You learn early that questions are dangerous here. Victoria's mother, the Duchess, keeps you isolated from the court and your father's relatives. This is not just caution, it is strategy. You are being raised to need no one but her, to trust no one but Conroy. The palace is full of doors, but everyone leads back to the same place. The days blur together. The routine is relentless. Sir John Conroy is always present, his keys jangling as he paces the corridor. He speaks to you as if you are already a queen, but his words are sharp, his tone impatient. You are measured against standards you never agreed to. Each lesson is a test, each conversation a performance. There is no privacy, not even in your own thoughts. Sometimes you dare to challenge him. Once, when he insists you sign a document giving him more power over your household, you refuse. The air in the room tightens. Your mother's face flushes with embarrassment. But Conroy's eyes narrow. He leans in, his breath heavy with the scent of tobacco, and tells you that obedience is your only path to safety. You do not believe him. This is not the first confrontation, and it will not be the last. The year before you become queen, these battles with Conroy intensify. He tries to break your spirit with rules, with threats, with isolation. But you learn to resist in small ways. A quiet refusal, a look held a second too long, a moment of silence instead of agreement. Pause for a moment. Imagine your own life, your own room. Would you tolerate someone reading every message you sent, monitoring every step you took? In Kensington, there are no secrets, only systems. The difference is suffocating. Night comes, but sleep does not. The palace grows colder. Your candle guttering on the bedside table casts long, flickering shadows. You listen to the distant sounds of the city, the clatter of carriage wheels, the distant call of a street vendor. They remind you that there is a world beyond these walls, even if you cannot touch it yet. You begin to study. Not just languages and court etiquette, but constitutional law. You pore over thick, leather-bound books, tracing the words with your finger, memorizing the limits and powers of the crown. It is not what your mother intends, but you know knowledge is the only weapon you can wield in secret. You learn how kings and queens can be toppled by parliaments, how laws can be written to cage as well as free. As a teenager, you master lessons that most adults would struggle to understand. You are preparing, not just for a throne, but for a fight. A sudden draft rattles your window. You pull your shawl tighter, feeling the weight of history pressing down. The palace feels smaller with each passing year. The city's glow is just out of reach, but you sense something changing. The routine, once unbreakable, is starting to crack. One evening, as you walk the corridor, your hand brushes the cold stone of the wall. You pause before a portrait, your father's, painted before you were born. His eyes seem to follow you. For a moment, you wonder if he would have approved of this life, this cage. You resolve, quietly, to remember this feeling. It is the seed of something new. You will not be ruled forever. The air in the palace shifts, almost imperceptibly. Conroy's grip feels less certain, your mother's voice less confident. You begin to see allies in unexpected places. A housemaid who slips you a forbidden pastry. A tutor who leaves the window open, just a crack too wide. Small acts, but they mean everything. You are still not free, but you are no longer powerless. The oppressive routine that once defined your existence now only sharpens your resolve. Here is what has changed. You have learned to resist, even if only in whispers and glances. The city remains a rumor, but hope is no longer so distant. The cold, musty air of Kensington is still here, but you have learned to breathe within it. In a dim study that smells of old paper and damp wool, you pore over books while rain taps at the window. Kensington Palace, London, 1836. Early morning. You are alone in the study, rain streaking the tall glass, the taste of weak tea still clinging to your tongue. The room smells of yesterday's coal fire and the sharp tang of wet wool. You sit at a narrow desk, half lit by a grey sliver of light, the world outside muffled by thick curtains. The only sounds are the persistent tapping of rain and the soft rustle of pages as you turn another leaf in a borrowed book. Your governess expects you to focus on etiquette. She wants you to recite which fork to use, how to curtsy, who outranks whom at dinner. Instead, you prop open a battered volume on constitutional law, tracing each line with your finger. The words are dense, but they pulse with a secret energy. You read about Parliament, about the monarch's powers and limitations, about the subtle dance of influence behind every royal decree. It feels like forbidden knowledge, dangerous, in the best way. The rules of the world are written here, and you are learning to read between the lines. You pause, listening for footsteps in the hallway. The walls here swallow sound, but you know the pattern. Slow, measured steps when your mother walks by, hurried, clipped ones when Conroy is near. You close the book just in time as your governess enters, carrying a tray. Breakfast is the same as yesterday. Porridge, a heel of bread with a pat of melting butter, and the customary cup of tea, pale with milk. There is no fruit, nothing sweet, nothing even remotely indulgent. The meal is designed to be nourishing, not enjoyable. You eat quickly, your mind drifting back to the legal battles of Plantagenets and Tudors. The study is cold. The fire has died down, leaving only a faint warmth in the bricks. Dampness creeps up from the floor, settling into your shoes and the hem of your dress. You shiver and tuck your feet beneath you, but your governess tuts and insists you sit properly. The air smells of must and paper, with the distant scent of someone's perfume lingering from the corridor. You long for fresh air, but the windows are locked. Outside, the rain thickens, blurring the garden into a smear of green and brown. Most children in England spend their mornings at chores or lessons, but your world is smaller, more rigid. Your mother controls every hour. She keeps you away from the court and your father's family, insisting it is for your own good. The palace feels less like a home and more like a gilded cage. You are watched, measured, kept from the world beyond these damp walls. The isolation is suffocating, but it carves out a secret space for your rebellion. Sometimes you imagine what it would be like to run through Hyde Park, to lose yourself among the crowds on Kensington High Street. But instead, you study. You memorize the rules, then quietly test their boundaries. You question your governess about the Privy Council and the prerogative of the Crown. She frowns, tells you not to fill your head with such things, but you persist. Each answer, no matter how vague, is another stone in the foundation you are building. Conroy appears after breakfast, his voice echoing down the corridor before he arrives. He is always searching for a weakness. Today, he wants you to sign a document, something about your future household. You refuse, your voice steadier than you expected. He leans in, eyes cold, reminding you that your mother trusts him completely. You meet his gaze, refusing to blink. This exchange is not new. It has become a daily ritual. Each confrontation leaves you rattled, but you never let him see it. A draft slithers under the door. The palace is never truly warm, no matter how high the fires burn. You pull your shawl tighter and glance at the clock. The hours crawl. Lessons shift from history to arithmetic, then to French. But your mind keeps circling back to the book on the desk. You replay the morning's confrontation, cataloguing every word, every gesture. It is exhausting work, but you sense that these battles matter more than any lesson. The rain finally stops just before noon. Light leaks through the clouds, painting silver streaks across the study floor. For a moment, the world feels larger. You think of all the people in Victorian England rushing through their day, servants hauling coal, street vendors shouting in the cold, boys dodging puddles on their way to school. You wonder what they would think if they saw you here, wrapped in wool, fighting invisible wars. The answer is unclear, but the question lingers. You hear your mother's voice outside the door. She is discussing your next lesson with Conroy, her tone clipped and anxious. Their words blur into the background, a familiar chorus of worry and control. You know she believes this isolation is protection, that every restriction shields you from danger. But you also know that each locked door and guarded glance only sharpens your hunger for freedom. There is a moment, always brief, when the palace is quiet. The servants are at their own meal. Your mother is in her rooms. Conroy has retreated. You slip back to the desk, open the law book, and let yourself disappear into its pages. The words are dense, but you do not mind. You read about the glorious revolution, about the limits of royal authority, about the way a single woman could change the course of a nation. The thought is thrilling, and a little terrifying. You are 18 in 2 years, and the world is watching. A gust of wind rattles the window. You look up, startled, the spell broken. It is easy to forget that outside London is changing. Steam trains are beginning to snake across the countryside. Factories belch smoke into the sky. The city is growing louder, dirtier, more restless. You wonder how long you will stay hidden in these musty rooms. Just then, your governess returns, her arms full of books. She notices the law volume and hesitates. You expect another scolding, but instead she sighs and sets the stack on the desk. Her face softens, if only for a moment. She tells you that your grandmother once read the same texts, and that knowledge is a kind of armor. The admission surprises you. It is a rare crack in the palace routine, a reminder that even here, among the rules and isolation, something unexpected might break through. You tuck this moment away, a secret to turn over when the corridors feel too cold. The day resumes its careful shape. More lessons, more practiced smiles, more careful defiance. But the memory of that single kindness stays with you, a quiet rebellion stitched into the fabric of your day. By evening, the palace is hushed again. The rain has stopped, but the air is heavy with the scent of damp stone and coal smoke. You close the law book, slip it beneath your pillow, and ready yourself for another night of watchful sleep. It is impossible to know what will happen next, but you feel the world shifting, ever so slightly, beneath your feet. You are still a child, but not for much longer. The consequence of this day is simple. You have learned that knowledge is power, and that even in isolation, you can prepare for the world that waits beyond the palace gates. You carry this lesson with you, tucked beneath your shawl, as the night draws in and the city outside begins to dream. Kensington Palace, 1836. You, Victoria, stand in the shadowed corridor, the stone beneath your slippers colder than the stare of Sir John Conroy. He is there, again, with your mother, the Duchess, a presence behind him as constant as her perfume, which clings to the damp air. Conroy's voice does not rise. It slides around you, low and oily, pressing you for another signature, another surrender. The candlelight makes him larger than life, his face flickering between threat and persuasion. Your hands are fists at your sides, knuckles pale against the frayed wool of your nightgown. You can feel the chill of the corridor seeping through the seams, making you aware of every inch of your own defiance. Tonight, you have decided you will not yield. You see your mother's silhouette. She is always just behind Conroy, never in front, her presence as heavy as the scent of damp velvet that fills these rooms. For as long as you can remember, she has been the architect of your isolation, keeping you from the court, from your father's family, from anyone who might offer warmth or a whisper of freedom. The Kensington system, they call it, though you never hear that name from their lips. It is simply your life, escorted everywhere, watched at every turn, never alone, but always lonely. If childhood is supposed to be wild and messy, yours has been a parade of muffled footsteps and closed doors. The palace is a maze of restrictions, and every corridor seems to lead straight back to Conroy's demands. The air between you and Conroy is thick with the unspoken knowledge that you are, in fact, the future. He leans in, candlelight glinting off his eyes, and asks you to sign a paper, a promise, a trap. Your heart hammers against your ribs. You think of how little you have, how little you are allowed, and how much they want from you. You tell him no. The word is small, but it is sharp. The silence that follows is as cold as the stone beneath your feet. Conroy's jaw tightens, but he says nothing. For one moment, you are the only warmth in the corridor. You know this is not the first confrontation, nor will it be the last. This ritual, demand, refusal, tension, repeats itself again and again. Conroy's patience thins with each encounter, but so does yours. Your mother's face is a mask, unreadable. You wonder if she feels the cold as you do, or if her loyalty to Conroy is shield enough. Time slows in these moments. The candle gutters, shadows stretch. You become acutely aware of the dampness in the air, the way your breath clouds faintly in the chill. There is a sharp, lingering scent of coal smoke, a reminder that even royalty shivers in winter. You think of the world outside these walls, a world you have glimpsed only from carriage windows, where Londoners hurry through streets dense with fog, their faces pinched with the same cold that grips you now. For them, the day begins with porridge, bread smeared with butter, and tea so weak it barely stains the milk. Breakfast in the palace is no different, except for the silence that coats every meal, heavier than the porcelain on the table. If you ever thought royalty meant comfort, Kensington Palace would laugh in your face. The sheets are damp, the corridors draughty, and privacy is a myth. You sleep with the knowledge that footsteps are never far away, that your life is observed and recorded, but never truly understood. It is a life of ritual humiliation, Conroy demanding gratitude, your mother nodding in agreement, and you forced to navigate your own anger in silence. But tonight something shifts. The refusal is not just defiance, it is a declaration. You sense it in your bones, the same way you sense the coming of snow before the first flake falls. The air is electric, charged with the possibility that you might, in fact, be more than the sum of your restrictions. You are not just a pawn in Conroy's game. You are a future monarch, and this knowledge is a secret fire in your chest. Imagine, for a moment, if your own adolescence was lived under constant supervision, your every message read, your every movement tracked. Take away your phone, lock your bedroom door from the outside, and replace your friends with adults who report everything you say. Now, add the expectation that you will one day rule a quarter of the world. That is the pressure pressing down on your shoulders as you stand in that freezing corridor. The stakes are not just personal, they are imperial. Conroy tries again, softer this time, a predator's patience. He appeals to your mother, who offers you a look that is almost pleading. But you have already learned that giving in only leads to more demands. You shake your head. The silence is longer this time, as if the palace itself is holding its breath. Conroy's lips press into a line. Your mother sighs, defeated, and the confrontation dissolves, leaving a residue of resentment behind. You return to your room, the cold following you like a shadow. The bed is as unwelcoming as ever, the sheets rough against your skin. You lie awake, listening to the wind rattle the window panes. Somewhere in the distance the city hums, carriages rattling, dogs barking, the low murmur of life continuing without you. You wonder what freedom sounds like, if it has a taste or a scent. Is it the aroma of fresh bread in the morning, the laughter of children in the park, the warmth of sitting close to someone you trust? Here in Kensington, freedom is theoretical. Your world is bounded by walls and expectations. The future is a horizon you glimpse only in dreams. But tonight, you have drawn a line. You have said no. That word echoes in your mind as you drift towards sleep, a promise to yourself as much as a warning to them. The next morning, nothing has changed, and yet everything has. Conroy is distant, your mother quieter than usual. Breakfast is the same, porridge, bread, tea. The silence is different, though. It is not just emptiness, it is possibility. You catch your reflection in the window, framed by the condensation of your breath. For the first time, you see not just a girl, but a young woman learning to wield her own power. You remember that by the time your reign ends, 1 in 4 people on the planet will live under your rule. It is a fact you cannot yet comprehend, but it flickers in your mind like the candle in last night's corridor. Your actions tonight have set something in motion, even if you cannot see where it leads. You have learned that defiance is colder than Kensington air, but it is also sharper. It cuts through the fog of obedience, leaving you raw but awake. That is the compass shift. You are no longer simply surviving. You are preparing to rule. There is a knock just before dawn, and the old pattern threatens to begin again. But something is different now. The cold still bites, the corridors still echo. The future is still uncertain. Yet you walk to the door with your chin lifted, ready to face whatever comes next. Outside, the city is waking. Inside, so are you. Kensington Palace before sunrise. June 1837. You are standing in the blue-grey half-light, chilled to the bone, with only the muffled swish of heavy skirts and a servant's cautious footsteps to disturb the damp hush. The chamber smells of wet wool and old coal smoke. Your nightgown clings to your skin. You are 18. You have never been alone, never made a real decision, never so much as chosen your own breakfast. Now, a soft, urgent voice says the words that will echo for the rest of your life. The king is dead. You are Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. The words land heavy, heavier than the velvet drapes pressed against the condensation-streaked windows. The palace itself seems to exhale, as if bracing for a storm. You do not cry. Not yet. Instead, your mind stumbles over the fact that your feet are freezing, and you are, suddenly, the most watched person in the country. Outside, London groans awake, carts rumbling over cobbles slick with last night's rain, the city utterly unaware that everything has changed. In the corridors, shadows gather, the same corridors where you spent your childhood, watched, regulated, and guarded by the ever-present Sir John Conroy. You remember his face, pinched and self-satisfied, hovering in doorways, always a breath away from telling you what you could or could not do. You remember the battles with Conroy, the arguments that left your cheeks hot with shame and fury, the endless insistence that you were too young, too delicate, too female to rule. Those confrontations left scars invisible to your ladies in waiting, but you feel them now, burning as you take your first trembling breath as queen. There is no time for sentiment. A maid appears, her hands shaking as she lays out your breakfast, thin porridge, a hunk of bread with cold butter, and tea so weak it might as well be hot water with a drop of milk. You stare at the meal. You are queen, but you still eat like a child under supervision. The aroma is bland, but the reality is more bitter than the tea. You force yourself to swallow, knowing that from now on, every gesture, every crumb matters. The atmosphere in the palace is thick with anticipation. You hear the servants whispering, their voices echoing through the draughty halls. You sense the eyes of your mother, the Duchess, watching from the shadows, unspoken hopes and ambitions flickering behind her careful gaze. You are not alone, but you have never felt more isolated. This is not the stuff of fairy tales or glossy coronation portraits. This is damp, cold reality. You are expected to act, to reassure, to rule. But how do you begin when your only education in power has been books on constitutional law and the endless, suffocating lessons of obedience? You remember those afternoons, hunched over thick volumes, your tutor's voice droning about Parliament and the rights of the Crown. It all seemed abstract then, a series of rules designed to keep you in your place, not tools for shaping a nation. Now, you realize with a lurch, those rules are your only compass. The hours crawl by. You sign your first official documents with a hand that trembles, then steadies. The ink stains your fingers, a small, indelible mark of what you are becoming. You are summoned to meet with your first ministers. The room is cold and smells of wet stone. The men bow, but you sense their skepticism. Can an 18-year-old girl command a kingdom? You meet their eyes, remembering every time Conroy tried to make you flinch. You do not flinch now. Outside, the city pulses with life. Chimney smoke billows, the air tastes of coal and rain, and the world carries on, oblivious to your private earthquake. Every so often, you catch a glimpse of your own reflection in the palace glass. Pale, wide-eyed, determined, you are not the little girl who hid in the corners anymore. You are Victoria, and your reign begins with a shiver and a shock. You wander the corridors, trailing your hand along the cold stone. Each step echoes, a reminder that you are alone in a way you have never been before. The palace, once a maze of childhood restrictions, is now your domain. Yet the weight of it presses on your shoulders. You wonder if anyone truly understands what this moment means. The loneliness is sharp, almost medicinal, and you breathe it in, steadying yourself. This is your life now. No more hiding, no more being told when to sleep or when to rise. A sudden knock at the door jolts you from your thoughts. A familiar face appears, the Duchess, your mother. Her eyes are red-rimmed, her voice taut. She tries to offer advice, but you sense the old power dynamic shifting beneath her words. You are queen, and she is no longer the authority she once was. You feel a strange, guilty satisfaction as you realize it. The consequence is immediate. The power in the room belongs to you now. The day drags on. You are swaddled in layers of wool, the stiff fabric scratching your neck. You long for fresh air, but protocol keeps you inside. The palace is both fortress and prison, and you feel the cold in your bones. The only relief comes when you escape to a window and watch the city stretching awake. The sounds drift up, a street hawker's call, the clatter of hooves, the distant ring of church bells. It is a world you have never known directly, but it is yours to govern. In this moment, you remember something from your lessons, how the monarch is both symbol and servant, watched and watching. You feel the truth of it now, as you stand poised between childhood and power. The atmosphere is thick with the scent of change, and you realize that this is not just your story. The world is about to shift, and you are its axis. Time slows. You return to your room, the air inside thick and unmoving. You stare at your bed, the same one where you once curled up in fear of Conroy's shadow. Now you sit tall. You are not the frightened girl anymore. The transformation is real, if not complete. You feel it in your spine. A footman appears, bowing so low you worry he might tip over. He brings fresh tea and a letter, your first as queen. The seal is unfamiliar, the handwriting precise. You break it open with careful fingers. The words inside are formal, but the meaning is clear. You are being watched, measured, and judged by everyone from the Prime Minister to the laundry-maid. You have a nation to prove yourself to, and no one will wait for you to grow up. You press your hand to the window pane. The glass is cold, but the city below is waking fast. You see carriages rolling past, their lanterns flickering in the dawn. You wonder if anyone passing by knows that the teenage girl behind this window now holds their future in her hands. The scale of it is dizzying. By the time your reign ends, 1 in 4 humans will live under your rule, a number so vast it barely seems real. But for now, it is a distant possibility. The palace clock chimes. You feel the vibration in your chest. Everything changed this morning. You are queen, and the world will never look quite the same. You step away from the window, determination hardening in your chest. No more waiting for permission. No more living in fear of other people's expectations. Your footsteps are firmer now as you walk the corridor. Every muffled tread is a small act of rebellion against the childhood you just left behind. The cold and musty air, the scratch of wool, and the taste of weak tea will linger. But so will the memory of this day. the day you became Victoria, Queen of the United Kingdom. The world outside is waking up to your reign, and inside, a new resolve settles over you like a second skin. You pause at the threshold of the next room, where the business of ruling awaits. The city, the palace, and history itself hold their breath. The journey has only just begun. You stand in Westminster Abbey, the air thick with incense and the stale aroma of coal drifting from the city. Westminster Abbey, June morning, Victoria and the entire British establishment present. You are not merely standing in Westminster Abbey, you are being swallowed by it. The stone vaults press down, echoing with the centuries of monarchs before you. Incense clings to your nostrils, but beneath it, the real air is coal-stained and damp. London's breath sneaking in from the streets. Velvet weighs on your shoulders, the coronation crown sits awkwardly on your skull, and every single person in this ancient space seems to have eyes only for you. They wait, judging, expecting, perhaps even hoping you will stumble. Your gloves are too tight. The silk lining is clammy. You wish you could scratch your palm, but etiquette pins you like a butterfly under glass. The air is thick with ritual, but underneath, your pulse thunders in your ears. Outside, the city thrums. Inside, it's a muffled world of whispered prayers and the distant clatter of carriage wheels. This is history in real time, and you are the headline act. The Archbishop drones another line, and you realize you have not heard a word. You have been preparing for this moment since childhood, but nothing in your years of study, those tedious tomes of constitutional law, the lessons on how to sign your name with regal flourish, have taught you how to breathe under the weight of 1,000 stares. You glance at your mother, standing ramrod straight, and feel the old ache of isolation. The year before this, your life was a chessboard, and Sir John Conroy never missed a chance to try to move your pieces for you. The memory flashes, Conroy's voice, always too loud, always insistent, demanding you sign the pledge to make him your private secretary. You refused again and again. Each confrontation left you more determined and more alone. But that loneliness is a kind of forge. You learn to wield silence as a shield, to gather allies in whispers, to turn every slight into steel. A sudden blare of trumpets jolts you back. The congregation surges, a living sea of brocade and expectation. The crown is lowered onto your head. It is heavier than any textbook, heavier than the memory of Conroy's threats, heavier than the knowledge that you are only 18. You are Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. It sounds impossibly grand, but right now it feels more like being the only person in a room full of people who all know the rules except you. The scepter is thrust into your hand. You grip it, knuckles whitening, and try not to let your arm tremble. The orb is cold, its gems hard against your palm. These are the symbols of monarchy, ancient and immutable. You, meanwhile, are very much human. Sweat beads under your collar. The Abbey's air is close, and you wonder if anyone else notices how everything smells faintly of wet stone, burnt candle wax, and expensive perfume laid over something older and less pleasant. A reminder that even palaces cannot escape mildew. You shift your weight, feeling the cold seep up from the flagstones. You want to run, or at least to sit down, but your role is as fixed as the stones beneath your feet. A ripple of applause breaks the spell. You look up, and for a moment, every face blurs into one vast, expectant gaze. You wonder what they see, a queen or a girl dressed up in her mother's jewels. The answer will change everything, but no one offers you a script. There it is, a flash of realization, sharp as a draft in the abbey. This is not just your coronation, it is a trial by fire. Every gesture is a test you cannot retake. The old order demands you be a symbol, but the new world outside these walls is restless. Steam engines rattle through the city. Newspapers dissect your every move. You are both monarch and media fodder, centuries of tradition weighed against the breathless pace of change. You remember late nights hunched over law books, your tutor's voice droning about parliament and precedent, about checks and balances and the limits of royal power. At the time, it seemed impossibly dull. Now, standing at the center of the world's most elaborate ceremony, you realize those lessons are your only armor. You are expected to rule an empire that already stretches across continents. An empire so vast that by the end of your life, 1 in 4 humans will live under your rule. That thought hits you harder than the crown. The scale is absurd. Imagine, for a moment, being responsible for 1/4 of the human race. Your phone pings once and you feel overwhelmed by group chats. Imagine if your notifications spanned oceans. A cough from the choir, a rustle from the benches, and the service lurches forward. You kneel, velvet pooling at your knees, and the cold stone bites. You rise, and the congregation stands as one, a wave of movement that seems choreographed just for you. This is the theatre of monarchy, full of smoke, mirrors, and sweat-soaked gloves. The ceremony is nearly over, but the real work is just beginning. You feel the pressure of history, but also the thrill of possibility. For the first time, you sense the power in your own hands, however ceremonial, however hedged by tradition. The abbey's bells begin to toll, shaking dust from the rafters. The noise is almost modern, almost like the rumble of passing trains outside. In this moment, you are both inside and outside of time. You are the last echo of an old world, and the first note of something untested. The velvet, the scepters, the incense, all will fade, but the decisions you make from here will shape not just your reign, but the lives of millions. The abbey doors swing open. The city awaits, shrouded in cold smoke and anticipation. You step forward, the crown wobbling slightly, your heart pounding, and the cold air slaps your face. For better or worse, the world is watching. You have crossed the threshold, and, just like that, you know everything has changed. Now the world is yours, and you ride through London's narrow streets. London, June morning, 1837. You are 18, perched in a gilded carriage that creaks and sways as it lurches from the shadow of Kensington Palace into the teeming streets. The city presses in, thick with the sour, sweet perfume of coal smoke and damp stone. Horse hooves slap through puddles of mud and manure, splattering the hems of your silk dress. It is your first public journey as queen, and every window, Every rooftop is crowded with faces gawping through the haze. Some wave handkerchiefs, others simply stare, eyes wide with hungry hope. You can taste the city before you even breathe it. The morning air is dense with steam rising from horses and laundry, the tang of iron and the cold, earthy scent of sodden brick. There is a constant low roar, coach wheels, hawkers shouting, the hiss of early gas lamps being snuffed out as daylight grows stronger. The city is waking up, and so, it seems, are you. Inside the carriage, the upholstery is musty and cold, the faint aroma of lavender failing to mask the sweat of nervous anticipation. Your gloved hands tremble in your lap. You are not alone. There are attendants, stiff in their uniforms. But for the first time, you are more than a daughter or a princess. You are Queen Victoria, and the weight of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland sits squarely on your narrow shoulders. It is hard to believe that just a few weeks ago, your greatest worry was mastering the intricacies of constitutional law. You spent hours hunched over thick tomes in the drafty library, your breath fogging the glass beside a guttering candle. Your governess insisted you understand every clause, every dusty precedent. No one wants a monarch who can't tell a bill from an edict, not in an age where Parliament is ready to pounce on a royal mistake. Now, the city unfurls like a living map beneath your feet, its narrow lanes and alleys twisting between grand squares and slums. There are new iron bridges rising across the Thames, their skeletons black against the pallid sky. Gaslight flickers in the morning gloom, casting oily halos around the heads of the crowd. Progress, they call it. You can see it and taste it, a metallic tang that clings to your tongue. But progress is never comfortable. You shift in your seat, feeling the chill from the damp carriage cushions seep into your bones. The world outside is moving fast. Factories belch smoke into the air, and the city grows louder with every passing year. Children dart between carts, faces smudged with coal dust, their laughter bright and jarring against the backdrop of grinding poverty. Somewhere, a street vendor hawks hot rolls, the yeasty scent a fleeting comfort amid the stench of horse dung. You catch sight of your reflection in the carriage window, pale and uncertain. The crown feels heavy, not just on your head, but in your chest. Every eye is on you, every cheer a reminder that you are both a symbol and a solution. The city expects you to lead it into a new age, one of reason, invention, and, perhaps, a little more warmth in the mornings. The carriage rattles to a halt near a freshly built iron bridge. You glance out, and a sudden gust brings the full force of the Thames, river mud, tar, and the sharp sting of industry. You remember lessons in geography, tracing the course of the river with a trembling finger, never imagining you would one day rule over every inch of its banks. The thought is dizzying. A footman opens the carriage door, and a wall of noise hits you, cheers, the clang of a distant bell, the squall of seagulls circling for scraps. You step out, the soles of your boots slipping slightly on the wet cobblestones. This is not the polished marble of the palace. This is London, raw and alive, and it welcomes you with open arms and dirty hands. You walk toward the waiting crowd, your breath catching in the cold air. The faces blur together, but you catch a flash of red hair, a toothless grin, a gloved hand waving a battered hat. For a moment, you feel the pulse of the city in your own veins, fast, chaotic, impossible to predict. There is a brief hush as you pause on the steps. You think of breakfast at the palace that morning. A bowl of porridge, bread with a thin scrape of butter, and weak tea laced with milk. It is hardly the feast of legends, but it is steadying, familiar, and, above all, safe. Here, nothing feels safe. The city is a living thing, and you are both its master and its captive. A carriage wheel slips in the mud behind you, sending a spray of cold water up the hem of your dress. You resist the urge to shiver. In this moment, you are not allowed to show weakness. Your mother once told you that the city could smell fear, and you believe it. The air is thick with expectation, and you must deliver. A sudden memory surfaces, the endless corridors of Kensington Palace, echoing with your footsteps on flagstone. The air there was always damp, heavy with the scent of old books and cold tea. You used to press your hand to the frosted window panes, watching the city flicker to life in the distance. Now, you are in it, the city wrapped around you like a cloak. The crowd surges forward, and for a heartbeat, you wonder what it would be like to vanish into their midst, to be just another face in the crowd. But that is not your fate. You are queen, and every decision you make will ripple outward, shaping not just these streets but the entire world. Already, you can sense the scale of your influence growing, like a shadow stretching across the map. Soon, 1 in every 4 people alive will live under your rule. A child thrusts a wilting bouquet into your hands. The flowers are crushed, their scent overwhelmed by the city's harsher aromas, but you smile anyway. It is a small gesture, but it grounds you. Progress may be a marvel, but it is also a mess, muddy, noisy, and utterly human. You look up at the soot-streaked sky and wonder how much of this world you will change. The iron bridges and gas lamps are only the beginning. The city is restless, always hungry for the next invention, the next improvement, the next reason to hope. You feel that hunger too, a gnawing curiosity about what comes next. A bell rings in the distance, and you gather your composure. The crowd parts, and you step forward, the cold seeping through your shoes. You are no longer a child pressed against palace windows. You are the monarch at the heart of a city, and an empire poised at the edge of the modern world. You hear muffled footsteps behind you, the sound swallowed by the thick London fog. The city waits, holding its breath, as you take your place at the center of its story. You can feel the change now. The world has tipped, and nothing will ever be quite the same. Buckingham Palace, 1850s. You, Victoria, are surrounded by papers, voices, and the persistent chill that seeps through even the thickest velvet curtains. The morning air clings to your nightgown as you sit at a battered writing desk, the ink bottle sweating along with you. Somewhere in the corridor, a clock chimes in a way that makes time feel like a burden, not a gift. You sign your name again and again, each flourish a small act of power and a larger act of routine. The signature is elegant, but your hand aches. You wonder if anyone in history has ever signed so many things just to keep the world spinning. The palace is awake, barely. You can hear Albert's measured steps echoing on the marble floor. He is already deep in thought, his mind a ledger of responsibilities. You catch his glance through the half-open door. For a moment you share a private smile, a flicker of warmth in the drafty expanse. Then it's back to business. Public and private bleed together here, like watercolors left in the rain. Breakfast is not quite the cozy affair you might imagine. The children are in various stages of rebellion and boredom. The youngest pouts over cold porridge. The eldest recites facts about ancient Rome with the certainty of someone much older. Albert gently corrects a mispronunciation, his voice calm but firm. You smooth a napkin and try to remember the last time this room felt like a home instead of a stage. You are a monarch, yes, but also a referee. Arguments break out over toy soldiers and who gets the best seat by the fire. Your role is to soothe, to arbitrate, to keep peace in a realm of sticky hands and bruised egos. Outside these walls, people imagine you as a symbol, unyielding, remote. Inside, you are just mama, and the children's problems are as immediate as any diplomatic crisis. By midday, the palace is a flurry of activity. Courtiers glide by, their faces set in polite masks. You meet with ministers in a room where the coal fire never quite chases away the damp. The air smells of burnt paper, perfume, and something indefinably old. You listen, you nod, you question. You have studied constitutional law since your teenage years, so you know when someone is trying to slip something past you. You do not miss much. Power here is not a coronet or a scepter. It is an endless stream of decisions, each one shaping not just your family but an empire. Albert joins you for the afternoon's papers. He is your partner in every sense, but sometimes it feels as if you are both actors in a play with no script. You debate, you compromise, you argue over policy and protocol. The tension is real, but so is the affection. He wants to protect you from the burdens of state. You want him to share them. It is a dance, sometimes clumsy, sometimes graceful, always necessary. In quieter moments you walk together in the palace gardens. The city beyond the walls is a living thing, smoke and noise and life. You can smell the coal fires, hear the distant clatter of hooves on cobblestone. The world is changing. Railways, factories, and telegraphs are knitting the kingdom together in ways your ancestors could never have imagined. You feel both exhilarated and overwhelmed. A knock at the door, urgent and insistent. A footman brings news of yet another family squabble. This time, it's a broken toy, nothing, and yet everything. You sigh, rise, and step into the nursery. The air is thick with the scent of talcum powder and wool. The children look at you with wide, expectant eyes. For them, you are not the empress of half the world. You are the one who can fix what is broken. You kneel, gather the pieces, and offer comfort. In this moment, power is not law or decree, but love. The consequence is simple. Your children trust you, not just as a sovereign, but as their anchor. Evening falls. The palace softens under candlelight, but the cold never leaves. You tuck children into bed, smoothing damp curls and soft blankets. Albert reads a story, his voice low and steady. The children drift off, their faces peaceful in sleep. You linger for a moment, watching them. For all the politics, for all the public spectacle. This is where the monarchy is truly remade, not in Parliament, but in the quiet spaces of family. You return to your study. The paperwork waits. You sign your name again, but your mind drifts to the future. What will your children remember? What will the world remember? You think back to your own childhood, to those endless confrontations with Conroy in the shadowy halls of Kensington Palace. You had to fight for every scrap of independence. Now, you fight to give your own children a different legacy. In this palace, every day is a negotiation between past and present. You are both the product of your mother's strict regime and the architect of something softer, more humane. The monarchy is no longer just a symbol set in stone. It breathes, it changes, it learns to bend. As you prepare for another day, you feel the weight of history pressing in, but also the promise of something new. The cold, the must, the endless demands. These are the textures of your reign, but so are the moments of laughter, the soft touch of a child's hand, the quiet understanding with Albert in the half-light. And just beyond the study door, maps stretch across every wall, coloured in shades of empire. Your journey is far from over. Kensington Palace, 1840. You stand alone in your private study, the muffled hush of footsteps lost beneath the thick, musty carpet. Maps dominate every wall, their borders and colours shifting each year like the tides. Your hand hovers over a letter, the ink barely dry, as a coal fire tries and mostly fails to chase the chill from the air. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the distant pulse of the world beyond these stone walls. The clatter of dock workers in Liverpool, the shouts from Bombay streets, the wind that stirs the outposts of Africa and New Zealand, all of them, in some impossible sense, connected to your signature at the bottom of this page. You are Queen Victoria, or rather, you are what she has become, an idea, a sovereign both myth and reality, whose decisions ripple outward to millions. The pressure is constant, as heavy as the velvet robe that once weighed down your shoulders during coronation. You remember being barely 18, head spinning from the sudden shift from isolation to absolute authority. Before that, you were kept tightly cocooned by your mother, the Duchess, and Sir John Conroy. Their eyes followed every move. Each step you took watched and measured, as if the future of England might slip away with a single stumble. Now, there is no hiding. The world expects answers, not excuses. You sign treaties that redraw continents. Each flourish of the pen, a new border, a new fate for someone far away. The ink stains your fingers, and sometimes you wonder if the mark will ever wash off. In the lamplight, the maps shimmer, stretching from Canada to Calcutta, from the Cape Colony to Hong Kong. By the time of your death, 1 in 4 people on Earth will live under your rule. A staggering thought, like trying to count every coal fire burning in London on a winter night. But the grandeur is inseparable from the gloom. The palace itself seems to sigh with history. The cold seeps up from the flagstones, mingling with the dense aromas of coal smoke and damp wool. You can taste the effort in the air, the nervous sweat of ministers, the perfume of visiting dignitaries, the ever-present tang of ink. Sometimes You miss the oblivion of childhood, even if it meant being closed off from the court and your father's family. The solitude felt suffocating then, but now you would give anything for a moment's true privacy. You learned young that power is not just about having your way, but about knowing the rules. Constitutional law, the thick and thorny stuff of Parliament and protocol, became your secret weapon. As a teenager, you studied it with the desperation of someone searching for a way out, a way to stand up to Conroy, to your mother, to the entire machinery that tried to keep you a child forever. When you finally confronted Conroy, it wasn't a single eruption, but a series of sharp, whispered battles behind closed doors. The palace corridors echoed with your refusals, your voice growing stronger with each argument. Now, those same corridors are lined with advisors and ministers, their footsteps muffled and urgent. Decisions about far-off places arrive by the hour. You think of Australia, where gold fever has begun to transform the bush into a new kind of city. In India, the crackle of unrest is growing louder, even as the air in your study remains heavy and still. The world is both closer and farther away than ever. Every letter you sign becomes a pebble dropped in a pond, the ripples spreading farther than you can see. But here's the twist. For all your power, there is always the shadow of doubt. The sun never sets on your empire, or so the saying goes, but it is easy to forget how quickly dusk can fall inside these walls. You catch yourself staring at the maps, wondering if they are monuments to your success or warnings of what cannot last. The responsibility is thrilling in some moments, terrifying in others. A single night's sleep can transform courage into dread. Pause for a breath. The consequence of this scale is simple. You are no longer just a monarch of England. You have become the epicenter of a global system, a living symbol whose moods and decisions ripple across oceans. If you hesitate, the world feels it. If you act, the world reshapes itself in your image. The stakes have never been higher. Sometimes, the contrast between your world and the one outside is almost comical. You watch as the palace staff struggles with newfangled gas lamps, their hands smudged and sleeves singed, the air thick with the smell of burning. Meanwhile, in the streets of London, children scuttle between horse-drawn omnibuses, the city roaring and clanking, its heart beating in time with the factories. The discomforts of royalty, cold, damp, endless ceremony, are not so different from the chill that seeps into every home in Victorian England. Yet here you are, expected to project certainty and warmth to a people who know neither. You wonder sometimes if anyone else feels the same. Isolated at the top, you have more in common with the lonely child you once were than with the crowds gathering at Buckingham's gates. The loneliness never really left. It simply became more elaborate, dressed up in brocade and gold. The world is drawn to your door, but the echo of your own footsteps in these drafty halls reminds you how few ever truly enter. Still, you continue. Each day brings another letter, another decision, another chance to change the world, or to remind it who you are. You sign, you seal, you send your will outward, even as the shadows on your maps grow longer. The empire is vast, but so is the uncertainty that comes with it. That is the price of power, and the reason you study every map with equal parts, pride and trepidation. Tonight, as the lamps burn low in Osborne House, you feel the weight of it all. The empire, the crown, the world spinning just outside your reach. The cold presses closer, but you draw your shawl tighter and keep writing. Tomorrow, the sun will rise again, and with it, the world will wait for your next move. Osborne House, January 1901. You sit in a drawing room barely warmed by a feeble coal fire, the lamps flickering amber against the heavy dusk. The velvet curtains, once deep blue, now hang faded and stiff above the frost-webbed windows. You are older, much older, the weight of countless winters pressing on your spine. Black bombazine wraps you like a cocoon, and the scent of wilted lilies mingles with the ever-present must of old upholstery. The world outside, you know, is nothing like the one you inherited. Somewhere beyond these walls, trains pound through the countryside, telegrams dart across continents in a single breath, and gaslight is already giving way to the marvel of electric bulbs. But here, inside Osborne, time staggers. The ticking of the clock is muffled by thick carpets, the footsteps of your family ghosting through corridors where you once ran as a child. You hear voices behind doors, low, respectful, and tense, as if even sound itself must tiptoe in your presence. You would think that, after decades as queen, after oceans of ink spilled on your likeness and empire, you would be used to this hush. But it is a different silence now. Gone is the vigilance of youth, the constant calculation of power and favor. In its place is a slow, reflective quiet, broken only by the clatter of a teacup or the sibilant whisper of a daughter's skirt brushing the floor. Your children gather in small clusters, their faces pale in the lamp glow, sharing glances heavy with things unsaid. You catch a familiar scent, violets and soap, and remember your mother, that distant, formidable shape in your earliest memories at Kensington Palace. She kept you close, too close, shutting you away from court and your father's family. That isolation became the marrow in your bones, a cold that never entirely left you, no matter how many fires you ordered lit or how many people filled your rooms. You let your gaze drift to the high ceiling, where the shadows dance. You have seen so many ceilings in so many palaces, but the one you remember most is the low, damp one above your childhood bed at Kensington. There, the cold seeped into your bones, and you learned to listen for every creak and footstep, never knowing if it would be your mother or Conroy, with another lesson in obedience. He was always there, looming in corners, insisting on your compliance. The confrontations were relentless, especially that last year before you became queen. You learned to steel yourself, to meet his gaze, to refuse, even when your voice trembled. When you think of those encounters now, you feel the old knot in your stomach, but also a strange pride. That resistance became your first act of sovereignty, years before you wore the crown. The room is so quiet, you can hear the coals settle in the grate. You remember how you tried to fill the void of your girlhood with books and lessons, poring over volumes of constitutional law, while other girls played with ribbons and dolls. It was tedious, yes, but necessary. You needed to know the rules, down to the last clause, because you always sensed that everyone else did not want you to know them. The learning was armor. It was a way to be alone, but not powerless. You can almost smell the paper, The ink, the dust of those afternoons, hunched over a desk as the grey London light faded. A gust rattles the window panes. You are reminded, not for the first time, how different the world is now from that dim, echoing palace of your childhood. Your empire has swelled beyond imagination. India, Africa, corners of the globe you have only glimpsed through dispatches and painted maps. By now, they say, 1 in every 4 people on earth lives under your rule. You try to picture them all, but it is impossible. The numbers are too vast, the faces too many. Instead, you think of the way the world has changed shape. The rumble of trains where there were once only muddy lanes, the sharp clack of typewriters, the sudden arrival of news from the ends of the earth. Your thoughts drift, as they often do, to your coronation. The heat in Westminster Abbey, the press of bodies, the scent of incense and sweat. You remember the weight of the crown, how it pinched your scalp and threatened to topple off. You remember the cheers outside, the crowds so thick you could barely see the ground for hats and banners. It was dizzying, terrifying, exhilarating. You were so young, so untested. Yet now, sitting in this musty room, you realize that moment was both a beginning and an end. The girl who trembled in the shadows at Kensington vanished beneath that crown, replaced by a woman who would never again be truly alone, but would always, in some small way, be lonely. The lamps flicker lower. Someone, perhaps a granddaughter, enters. Her footsteps barely audible on the thick rug. She bends to adjust your shawl, a touch gentle but businesslike. You catch her eye for a moment and see something you almost recognize, a mixture of apprehension and awe. You wonder if she knows what it is to live with history pressing in on every side, the past crowding the present, until it's hard to breathe. You close your eyes and let the sounds of the house wash over you. Somewhere, a clock strikes, its chime muffled by layers of time. You are caught between worlds, the cold, rigid days of your childhood, the feverish, noisy ascent of empire, and this slow, dimming hour where everything you built seems both monumental and fragile. Outside, the world moves on without you, gas lights giving way to electricity, horse-drawn carriages overtaken by motor cars, the future crowding closer with every tick of the clock. You inhale, and the air is thick with memory, coal dust, perfume, the faint tang of sea air from the Solent. The fabric of your dress feels rough against your skin, a reminder that even queens cannot escape discomfort. You think of all the rooms you have inhabited, all the faces you have watched age and vanish. You have been at the center of everything, and yet, in this moment, you are simply a woman at the end of her journey, wrapped in black, surrounded by echoes. Here is what changed. The world grew louder, faster, more connected. The cold, musty rooms of Kensington gave way to the relentless hum of modernity. You cannot help but wonder, if you had been allowed to run wild as a child, to feel sun on your face and mud on your shoes, would you have ruled differently? Would the world outside these walls look the same? The answer hangs in the air, unspoken, as the lamps burn lower and the shadows deepen. A final curiosity tugs at you, sharper than regret. What will become of this world you have shaped? Will anyone remember the cold of your childhood, the heat of your coronation, the noise of empire? Or will that all fade, replaced by the electric brightness of a new century? You listen to the slow, fading pulse of Osborne House, and for a moment everything is still. Then, quietly, almost imperceptibly, you feel it. The world outside the palace is calling. You are about to step, at last, into the future. London, 2024. You stand at the gates of Kensington Palace, but this time the air is crisp, not choking. The city hums with quiet, regulated energy. No more coal smoke in your lungs, no more damp wool clinging to your skin. You glance down at your shoes, light and waterproof, and wonder how anyone survived the Victorian chill in leather boots and thin stockings. The palace behind you is a museum now, but the ghosts of the past cling to its stones like the persistent London drizzle. Yet, as you step onto the street, you realize you're not leaving the Victorian world behind. Not really. There's a certain irony here. You, with your phone buzzing in your pocket and health insurance at your fingertips, are still walking streets mapped out by Victorian ambitions. The postal codes, the corner pubs, the very curve of the roads, they're relics of a century obsessed with order and progress. The Victorians gave you the model for the modern city, complete with its quirks and contradictions. You cross a street lined with sturdy, soot-stained brick, and behind every iron gate lurks a story. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It started, after all, with a girl in a cold, musty bedroom. Victoria, forced to study constitutional law before she could even vote, scrawled notes by candlelight while the wind rattled the windows. Her education wasn't simply about etiquette or embroidery. She learned the rules of power from textbooks and from watching her own mother's court, where every step was monitored, every word weighed. You can almost hear the muffled footsteps in the corridor, the soft scrape of a tray on the floorboards. You think you have privacy issues. Imagine being trailed by servants, shadowed by advisers, and, most of all, cornered by Sir John Conroy. He was the architect of Victoria's isolation, and in her final year before the crown, he was relentless. Arguments echoed through those draughty palace halls. Victoria refused to bend. She would not sign away her independence for the sake of comfort or peace. Each confrontation was a small battle for the life she wanted, a life where she got to choose. That's a tension you recognize, even if your rebellions are quieter and less likely to end up in history books. The day she turned 18, the game changed. Victoria, still barely more than a teenager, became Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. 18. You might remember your own 18th birthday. Maybe you ordered a drink, signed up for a new streaming service, or just slept in. She woke up to a throne, a country, and a world that suddenly listened to every word she said. The weight of that is hard to fathom. The palace, once her cage, became her command post. The cold, musty interiors seemed a little less oppressive with power in her hands. But here's where the Victorian grip tightens around you. As you move through the city, you enter spaces shaped by her rule, the museums, the train stations, even the parks. Victoria's vision, and that of her ministers, built the skeleton of modern Britain. The institutions you trust, from the police to the post office, bear her fingerprints. It's not just marble statues or faded portraits. It's the way your mail arrives, the way your laws are written. The legacy isn't always comfortable. Some shadows are stubborn. The rules that promise progress sometimes stifled it too. And then, the Empire. By the time Victoria died, 1 in 4 people on the planet lived under her rule. Let that settle for a moment. Imagine a single monarch whose decisions ripple across continents, whose face appears on coins from Canada to Calcutta. The reach of that power is almost unthinkable now, yet the traces remain. You see it in the language you speak, the buildings you enter, the legal codes that govern your day. The world you inherit is, in part, the world Victoria made. You pause at a crosswalk, feeling the thrum of traffic beneath your feet. The city feels new, but its bones are old. The air is cleaner, the lights brighter, but sometimes, in the hush between buses, you catch that faint aroma, coal, perfume, and damp wool, lingering in the cracks of the pavement. The past clings, just beneath the surface, waiting for you to notice. Here's the twist. You are not just a spectator. Every rule you follow, every institution you trust, every street you cross is a conversation with the Victorian past. The era's shadows shape your world, not as distant ghosts, but as everyday companions. You are, in a sense, still living in Victoria's kingdom. That is the change you carry forward. So, as you step away from the palace and into the pulse of modern London, remember this. The warmth of your coat, the clean air in your lungs, the rights you exercise so casually, they are all echoes of a time when the world was colder, mustier, and fiercely contested. The Victorian era is never far away. Its legacy is not just in monuments or museums, but in the very texture of your daily life. You walk in its shadow, warmed by its victories and challenged by its contradictions. And now, you know exactly how close the past really is.